Hello, this Columbia College Chicago Library video will demonstrate how to create a crosstab report and how to interpret the results in a basic way. This is in MRI Simmons Insights, one of the databases provided by the library. I've downloaded the results of a crosstab report that I created in MRI Simmons. So let's talk about the components of that. A crosstab report allows you to select from the answers that survey completers gave to the many questions that are asked by the National Household Consumer Survey. And you can take that data and then compare different groups, say target demographic groups, by their behaviors, their preferences, their brands, their leisure time activities, certain kinds of market segmentation factors. There are a huge number of data points that you can compare. So in this table, I have named my table, my crosstab report, age groups and leisure activities. I got it from the latest NHCS adult study, which is what we recommend. We're doing the basic population, in other words, compared to all of the people who took the survey. And here you can see the factors. So study universe always indicates the results from the entire population survey. So the unweighted number is 25,910, which are the number of people who took this national survey. And then the weighted number is the total adult population in the US. And that will be important in how we interpret the results. The 100% simply means that this is the whole group, and we're going to be comparing other groups to that whole group. And the 100 is the standard average index for the likelihood that a group answered that question. The study universe is always 100 if they're the base for comparison. And that's average. And then we'll look at the indexes for other groups based on their choices and behaviors. So I've chosen to compare a group that is age 20 to 24 with another group that is age 40 to 54. And we're looking at leisure activities. So I chose people who said in the last 12 months they have enjoyed antique shopping or shows, cooking for fun, bars, nightclubs, dancing, or photography. And we're not going to interpret all of the numbers. I'll have another video on how to do that. But we're going to look at the index, which is where you really get the important factor of likelihood for that consumer group. So we can see here that in the age 19 to 24, they were less likely than the 100 average to go antique shopping, about 12% less than the average. They were about normal, which is indicated by this horizontal yellow arrow, to cook for fun. And they were 61% more likely than the average to go dancing or to nightclubs and bars. And they were about 58% more likely than the average to participate in photography. But then if we compare them to the older group between 40 and 54, then we see that this group is about the same as the average for antique shopping, just a little bit higher, but still considered average here by the horizontal arrow. And still about average for going to bars and nightclubs, and a bit below average for participating in photography. So you can see that the younger group is more likely than the average, and then this older group to participate in bars and nightclubs and dancing and in photography. That's a basic example of a crosstab report. Now let's see how I created this report. We're going to go into MRI Simmons through the library. And be sure that you're in version 2.0. That's the version I'm going to use in this video. If you see launch 1.0, then you are in 2.0. Otherwise, if it says launch 2.0, you should do that. We're going to go to Analyze. This is where the crosstab report option comes up. And we're going to choose the NHCS adult study. This is the largest collection of data. There are some other things that you can explore in some of the other studies, but in general, you're going to get more results if you use this complete study, the latest one available, which is not the latest data available to corporate clients, but to an academic subscription. Those are the latest data. You can see all the categories you could choose from. You can enter search terms. You can also browse through. So for age, I'm going to go to the lifestyle demographics and re-choose demographics, personal information, and go with age. I'm going to choose all the ages that I'm interested in for the range that I'm looking at. So I'm looking at ages 19 to 24. I've got to decide how to put these into a group. And what I'm trying to look for is anyone who answered yes to any of these ages. So instead of saying and, which is right here, or each, I'm going to say or. In other words, I want any of these to apply to my search. So there we have it. And we can take this and put it in columns or rows. Generally, we'll want to put the target group in the columns. Now we can go back and do this for the group that's between 40 and 54. Again, I'm going to say I'll take any of these. So I'm going to say or 40 or 45 or 50, etc. And then I can choose that one and pull it over here. So there we have two separate groups that we're going to compare. We could, while we're here, add other factors in, like race or Hispanic origin or any of the things that are listed here if we wanted to look at a more specific group. Now I'm going to pick what I'm going to put in the rows for comparison. And rather than browsing all the way through, I typed hobbies. You could type in leisure, you could type in activities. The trick is keep trying until you find an answer that seems appropriate for what you're trying to measure. So this is under entertainment and leisure, leisure activities, hobbies in the last 12 months. So that's the list I chose from. It won't always be this easy. I practiced this, so don't get discouraged. If you need help, you can always use the Ask a Librarian option to get help. So here's cooking for fun, going to bars and nightclubs, photography. We had one more, shopping for antiques. Now I'm going to pull those hobby options over here. And I want to look at each of them separately. So I'm not going to choose to combine them with and or. Instead, I'm going to select them all and just pull them as individual items over to the rows. So here we have our demographics in the columns and our leisure activities in the rows. You can choose to give these shorter names if you like. I'm not going to do that right now. So then we're going to run our report. And then here is the result that we saw earlier that I had already downloaded to the Excel file. So that's how you create that report. And right here is your option for exporting to Excel or CSV. And you can also give your report a name. And save. Again, if you have questions, you can reach out to me through the research guide, or you can use Ask a Librarian on any library page, and someone will help you. Thank you.